All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. As we announced, we're going to be talking about defending your value. I've noticed a lot of conversations recently with agents that actually, can you close that door? Yeah, thank you. Noticed a lot of conversations recently with agents that they're just feeling the commission pressure. They're getting a lot of pushback from their clients and other consumers in the marketplace. And these are uncomfortable conversations. And that's because I think that as a society, Americans are uncomfortable with conversations about money. And we're also uncomfortable with what a lot of people, I think, would perceive as being braggadocious. Right? It's like, oh, yes, of course I'm worth it. I'm the best thing ever, kind of thing. And I'm just as guilty of this as anybody. When I'm talking with other agents on a referral and they ask, okay, great, what are your qualifications? How can I sell you to my clients? I lean into things like, I'm born and raised here in Virginia Beach, 20 years in the business, Buffini coaching for 18 plus years. And then I struggle because I know that, the numbers stuff is important to consumers. Um, but I kind of feel ashamed and I say, okay, well, I was Realtor of the Year in 2016. I'm top 2% of the marketplace in the nation. Lead a team of three people and we do, $30+ million in volume a year. So, it's like I just kind of spit all that out, but that's a sales pitch, right? And we've got to get in that mindset that it's okay to talk about our worth, right? So, in the vein of the best offense is a good defense, we're going to talk a little bit today about defending some of these positions and being ready for them. And I think the main place to start with, um, just checking comments here. Um, Maggie, just make sure your little microphone audio thing, click the little caret and then make sure it's pointed to the right direction for audio output, um, if you're there. Um, so one of the things we have to start with is the notion of an abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset, right? That scarcity mindset is, ah, yeah, I'm just pushing paperwork around. That's not worth 3%, right? I'm going to stick a sign in your yard, put it in the MLS, and it's going to sell like that. And yeah, I don't blame you for not wanting to pay 3%. Um, yeah, there is another agent that will do it for less. So I guess I'll have to do it for less. That's a scarcity mindset. If we approach it with an abundance mindset and sort of the notion of playing like you already have the money in your pocket, not quite fake it till you make it, but just, you know, act as if you already have the business, act as if they already know your value. Um, that will bode well in your favor. So the mindset of abundance for defending your value is um, notions, and you don't necessarily verbalize this, but hold it in your head. You know what? 3% to represent you in a buyer transaction, that's a steal in this marketplace, going up against everything else that we have to go up against. Um, Selling your home for 3% on the list side, that's an absolute steal when you consider that effectively that rate hasn't changed in 3 generations, right? And then, that's actually a conversation I've had is, it's like, oh, I said, have you heard about inflation recently? We're still only charging 3%. In my 20 years of doing business, I've only ever charged 3% on a side. That always gets them, because that's all they've heard for the last 6 months is, oh, inflation is horrible. Inflation is horrible. Like, well, okay, let's talk about that. Um, but some notions about where you really get your value. Um, Local knowledge, right? We know things about properties that in neighborhoods and cities that consumers generally don't know, right? We, if we're not plugged in already, we should be plugged into what's happening in various cities, and maybe just at a 30,000 foot level. We don't have to be granular. But show of hands, who heard that Chesapeake is thinking about rezoning schools again? If this is news to you, you probably need to go look it up, because this is something that is going to affect people wanting to buy in Chesapeake. Who has heard about the Dome and Wave Park project in Virginia Beach? Right? That's something that's going to affect values. I'm having conversations with a client right now, considering a condo at the oceanfront in anticipation of the excitement that's coming with the Wave Park. Road projects, construction projects. Who's heard about the 460 corridor project in Suffolk? That's where we have this huge explosion of warehouses and Amazon facilities specifically along 460 on the northwest side of Suffolk, right? That's going to generate about 20,000 jobs. Where do you think they're going to want to live? Right? We all know things about the community from having lived here for a minute or two. And even if you're fresh off the boat, you probably already know Hampton and Norfolk are this close on a map. But if you're stationed at Langley or you're stationed at Norfolk, you're going to live on that side of the water, right? Because we've all talked to people, oh, well, it's so much more affordable over here, or it's just a short jump over there. No, that little distance between Hampton and Norfolk can take 3 days sometimes, right? So we've got to tell people, it's like, you know what? Yeah, our traffic is bad in certain spots. It's not bad in other areas. So that market knowledge is going to be important. I say, especially if you're looking to grow your business, if you're new to the business, go see as many houses as you can, regardless of having clients, right? Go to open houses, look for vacant listings so you're not inconveniencing somebody. Go and see these houses. I can't tell you the numbers of times in the last 20 years of doing this that I have turned to a client while in a house and said, I was in this house about 4 or 5 years ago when it sold the last time. They've done a good job here in updating. And I am now the immediate market expert on that house because I've been in it before. Or I've been in the neighborhood and I know that this is one of maybe 4 or 5 floor plans in the neighborhood. And if you look closely, you can see they just kind of flip the houses every so often, and I've seen them where this is still a closed-in wall, but this one they've opened it up and now the kitchen opens right into the dining room. And, see those kinds of things as you'll start to see these patterns, right? Know where the jet noise is in Virginia Beach and in Chesapeake and in Norfolk with Chambers Field. Where are the planes flying? Don't know why we don't have to disclose this in Hampton with Langley Air Force Base, but that's their problem. But that local market expertise, whether you're representing a buyer or a seller, is invaluable. Pricing advice. There's another one. And it's not always science with pricing, right? Sometimes we kind of just have to go with a gut feeling. I call that what I call the Ouija board approach to real estate, right? You do your data, you look at the numbers, you refine the comps, you bring it together and like, okay, it's between 400 and 500,000. That's not good enough, right? That's a very broad range. So then you have to kind of start making some adjustments and maybe you get it from 420 to 480. Still not good enough. So then you kind of just go, the Ouija board is like, okay, it kind of feels like 465.9 kind of thing. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But when you're doing your pricing, you have access to data that the consumers don't. And it's not just pricing data, right? That's important. But one of the ways we defend our value and justify what we earn is picking up the phone, right? A lot of times, especially now when we don't have commissions published in the MLS anymore, and the concessions field, which has always been in the MLS, but it's always been optional. If I'm trying to price a property and prepare my seller for what's coming in the marketplace, or if putting together an offer packet for a buyer, and it's like, could we get closing costs? Could we get a price reduction? Um, does the seller need a rent back? I need to pick up the phone and call the other agents in that neighborhood. And I do this quite a bit. It's like, hey, this is a great property that you sold last month. Can you tell me, what did the sellers pay, if anything, for cooperating compensation? Um, were the were there any closing costs paid? Anything else? Home warranty, excessive repairs, or see that you had it listed at 420, but you sold for 400. Was it just a cut and run situation for the seller, or was there some other compensating factor? And it could be they just lowered the price because of repairs, or it could be that it was a divorce or death situation and they just wanted to be done and out. Those kinds of things. And then you can explain to whichever client you're representing what the story is, right? Because all they know is that the Smiths down the street got 500,000 for their house, right? And my house is worth 500,000. Well, the Smiths just put in a pool last year. And so that's at least 20 to $50,000, depending upon the pool. Or they actually have a larger lot than you do. Or you haven't been in the Smith's house in a couple of years. They renovated the kitchen to the tune of $75,000 and it looks phenomenal. And that's why they got more money. Um, these kinds of things. And I would do a lot of this work up front, whatever listing appointment you have, um, buyers that you're working with, try and do some of this research up front because it will help you in the long run. At the very minimum, it will get you information in your knowledge bank for later, right? Because I don't get every listing that I compete on, but I have all that knowledge in my brain. So if I miss out on something, then when I come back to that neighborhood, or if I have buyers for that listing, which a lot of times, if I don't get a listing, I usually get a little miffed. And I'm like, I'm going to sell that house. I'm one way or the other, I'm going to sell that house. And maybe about half the time, 40% of the time, I actually find a buyer for the listing I miss out on. So now I have all the market data from when I did the listing presentation to present to my buyer, say, hey, I was in this house. I didn't get the listing, but I know everything about, I know the seller's situation. We're gonna, leverage everything we can. So that pricing and data for the neighborhood is helpful. One thing I've been doing lately, which has been a real benefit, is looking at historical market times, right? Because we always say, hey, the fourth quarter, it's a little slower in the year, and the first quarter starts to, pick up a little bit January, February, but it's still a little slower than what we typically see in the second quarter of the year. Um, you can go back and look at the data, right? I just did this for a listing we have in Kiln Creek, and it's like, okay, we got to offer contingent on a sale of a house in Poquoson, way on out in Poquoson. Um, what are the current market times looking like for the last 180 days? Okay, have that. Let me look at last year to see, is this seasonality holding true, right? And so instead of just looking at fourth quarter last year, because they're putting their house on the market this week, I looked at the November 1, 2023 timeframe to February 28th, 2024 timeframe, and looked at the average market time for a one-story house in Poquoson within this square footage kind of size, just trying to do like a little quick CMA kind of thing. I don't care about price at that point. I'm just looking at how long is it going to take this contingent home to sell. And it was about the same. 21 days last year, currently 23 days on the market to sell. I'm feeling pretty good. I told my client, go ahead and accept the offer, right? Market times last year look good. Market times this year look good. So I feel pretty bullish that we're going to be all right in that. So the data is going to really help you. Another thing within market expertise is negotiation skills, right? Um, we as realtors are very good at taking emotion out of a highly emotional situation, right? Whether it's a rental, a listing, a buyer, whatever, it's emotional, it's big. This is your whole life that you're picking up from one location and moving to another, and there's a lot of money involved. And that usually is the punch in the gut for a lot of people. Some people are excited, and that's great. I love it when they're excited because, that's going to make it a lot easier. It's like, yes, let's do this, let's go. But a lot of people, even if they seem excited on the surface, there's some sort of underlying trepidation, right? There's a little nervousness. And we have to keep reminding them that this is the process, this is to be expected, or this is what we're expecting, and it didn't happen that way. So now we get to have corrective action. Um, we also have to try and find a reasonable way forward. One of the things, and I know Jenny likes when I use this language, what is reasonable? What is equitable, right? It's not saying we're going to cream the other guys or we're going to, have a scorched earth mentality. But when we look at a negotiation, what is reasonable, right? And I'll often take that to my clients, whoever I represent. I'm like, I don't blame them for asking, or I don't blame them for pushing back on what we're requesting, right? That's what I would recommend if I was on the other side. But let's try and find a way forward. Let's find that middle ground that gets us what we want, but also acknowledges that the sellers want something too, or whichever side you're working on. So the negotiation skills are very important, and maintaining that impartiality and neutralness as we go through the transaction is absolutely critical. So some jumping off points from there, I think would be important to look at. We were just talking about the GRI classes that are offered by Hurrah and other local associations, but look at the Real Estate Business Institute. They offer the Real Estate Negotiation Expert certification, RENE. That's a phenomenal certification, right? Because that teaches you, sort of some of the psychology of negotiating in real estate, and also some very practical skills for negotiating in real estate. NAR offers the Pricing Strategy Advisor certification, PSA, and I think, Jenny, you have that. That's a great one because that also teaches you some skills on, how to justify your pricing and dig a little deeper so that, yeah, agent over here came up with the same price, but, I came up with the same price too. Let's dig into the data and let me show you how I came to this conclusion, right? Because a lot of other agents out there, I've gone up against numbers of neighborhood experts, and I'm not the neighborhood expert, but because I show them the work and we look at the data together, I'll sometimes get that listing because they feel that I am much more transparent. And a lot of times, especially lately, I tell people, like, I'm a blackjack dealer. I said, you see my hands the whole way through the transaction, nothing up my sleeve. I said, I'm going to show you everything. I'm going to tell you everything I can. I'm going to prepare you for, what's coming and what's coming next. In the absence of getting those specific designations and certifications, there's RAIN. They offer CMA classes on how to generate data through RAIN. Those are free of charge, included in your dues to RAIN. I'm sure you can find plenty of YouTube videos and things like that on negotiation, but just try to find where you can leverage your education and expertise to defend your value. Another thing that, especially as you get more entrenched into the marketplace and the more you learn about the marketplace, off-market opportunities, right? You'll hear from people like, oh, we're thinking about selling in the spring. Great. I'll hit you up in the spring. But if you know that house and you have a buyer comes to you today and says, I'm looking for a house just like that one, it behooves you to say, I have these other folks I know that are thinking about selling. Let me reach out to them and see if their timeline is hard for the spring or if they might consider an early January move. And now you're a rock star because and you literally, that's knowledge that nobody else in the world has, right? You're the agent that knows that they're thinking about selling in the spring, and you have a client right now, a buyer, that timeline may work, and that house may be perfect for them. And so you work behind the scenes to see if you can make, as I call it, that love connection. Maybe works, maybe doesn't. But again, those kinds of opportunities pop up. Going through the listings and looking for expired or fall through or withdrawn listings for your clients, there's an opportunity there as well. Those properties are off the market. If you check the tax record and they haven't transferred, but that's the neighborhood your buyer wants, there may be opportunity there, right? And where there's a will, there's a way. There's a way to find out that person's telephone number. You can go knock on their door. And as long as you approach it, as the Ted Lasso mentality goes, approach it out of curiosity, not judgment, and just say, hey, saw you withdrew your house from the market 2 months ago. I have someone really looking for this neighborhood. Would you consider? And if they say no, fine. If they say, get off my bleeping lawn, fine. You know, but you got to ask, right? It doesn't hurt to ask. Another big thing we do that I have seen numerous FSBOs try and do, and I have buyers buying a for sale by owner, transaction management, right? They're complex. They involve legal documents. There are certain frameworks that we have to work within. Um, I love working with estate situations because that involves a lot of people to bring that together. There's courts, there's wills, there's attorneys, there's sometimes CPAs. And, for me, that's fun to manage that many pieces of a transaction because I know how it all works, right? And I have a lot of people who have inherited property that they'll come to us and they're like, we don't know what we're doing. I got you. I can manage this. We got these people to do this, we got these people to do that, and off we go, kind of thing. Um, and so in transaction management is part of the process from pre-listing on through, right? A lot of us have had situations where before we list a house, it needs a little bit of work. Sometimes just cleaning, but sometimes some action on deferred maintenance, sometimes some refreshing with painting, sometimes staging. And those are elements that, we manage going through. I see, um, here's a fun exercise for you because I see this a lot on Zillow. A lot of for sale by owners are taking their own photos and they're charging $1 million plus for their house. And I'm like, oh my God, at the very least, hire a J.C. Penney photographer to come in and do something better than your iPhone or Droid photos for a house that you think is worth $1 million. I also, by the way, see some real estate agents that are doing that too. And it's like in this day and age, it's just silly. Um, but, sort of managing that process all the way through, I think is important. Um, Professional advice, basing some of your advice and decisions on what other experiences you may have had in the business, um, stories you've heard from the office. This is why it's important to come to office sales meetings because you will hear what we call tales from the trenches or war stories. And you can say, oh, this didn't happen to me, but in my office, we had this situation. And I lean on those all the time. And I've had a lot of experiences that have, given me plenty to work with over the years for advice. But there's one in particular that to this day I still talk about. Um, Years and years ago, this may have been 20 years ago when I first got in the business, we had recently had in the office a lawsuit where buyers came to the walkthrough right before closing, and this gorgeous glass chandelier was not in the dining room. And of course, that was the only reason these buyers bought that house, was because of that beautiful chandelier. The sellers never intended to convey the chandelier because through their travels or whatever, being stationed overseas, I think it was from Turkey, and they bought it in Turkey and had it shipped, and it was, this very expensive, very nice, very sentimental thing. And it was just an absolute mess, because then you get into the definition of what is personal property, what is a fixture in the home. And we typically define a fixture as something that is actually affixed to the home and would require work to remove it. And it's like, okay, so is the chandelier actually a fixture? Because, it was kind of like harnessed and bolted into the ceiling and then, wire nuts. It wasn't like a refrigerator that you just slide out, unplug, and it goes, right? So it was a mess. So that's one of those things that if I go into a home and I see a beautiful ceiling fan or a beautiful chandelier, or I've done this especially with bathroom mirrors. And I had one recently down at 34th Street. The hall bath, the half bath mirror was gorgeous, fit the room perfectly, color design, everything. Like that mirror goes with that powder room. And I asked, because it was a really nice mirror. And they said, yeah, we got it at the Boardwalk Art Show. Like, okay, we might have emotional attachment. They bought the mirror at the Boardwalk Art Show, but we really like that it goes with this bathroom. We bought it specifically for this bathroom. We don't know where else we might use it. Fine. So you're going to leave it. Yeah, we're going to leave it. Are you sure? Yeah, it goes with the bathroom. It's like, okay, let's put that in writing, you know, because I don't want someone to fall in love with the mirror, go to walk through, and then the mirror's not there, kind of thing. So, and we did, we put it in writing that yes, that half bath mirror stays, and it did. And they were telling the truth. They really had no emotional attachment to it. They just saw a special piece and it fit that room, the way it was painted, the way it was with all the fixtures in there, was perfect. Great. So those kinds of stories, as Tina likes to say, stories stick. Those can inform your market advice as well. All right, so let's actually talk about commissions now, and then to brace yourselves, I'll get ready to start asking questions and offering some ideas of your own. Um, it's been interesting to see that commissions from RIS Media did a study that concluded just a couple of months ago. I think it was concluded in October. They're finding that yes, the average commission rate is declining, but it has been declining over the last several years. So it's hard to say, is the decline from 2023 into 2024 related to the settlements and lawsuits, or is this just part of the natural decline? Some of this we can blame on builders, right? Because even before the lawsuits and settlements, like Ryan Homes and some of the others, they were offering like a flat $1,500 as a buyer's agent's commission. And we've taken that every now and again, just because that's what has to happen. The buyers have no extra money at all, and we're squeaking it out. Fine. Just send me the referrals, please and thank you. Let's just get through this. So that's where some of the downward pressure has been coming, is from builders, especially in those hotter years where, 2020, 2021, 2022, where it's so easy to sell a home. You get multiple offers, before you even put the lockbox on the door. But we've started to see some stabilization in real estates. On average, per side, and a side or a unit is the list side or the buy side. So there's commission on both sides, of course. Per side, it's looking like we have been averaging from 2.58% to 2.68% on average over the last year, which is not bad, right? To hear some people say the sky is falling, but we're holding pretty steadily there. Now, my personal prediction is that we will probably see further pressure on commissions, and that we may drop a little bit below that 2.5-ish mark on average. But by the same token, we're still seeing lots of people paying 3 on the side. I just got one under contract. What was it, Jan? Monday, I think, Tuesday, of last week, or no, Friday, I think. Um, we got 2% closing cost assistance for the buyer, and they're paying me my 3% on the buy side. I was thinking either the closing cost or my commission would have to go away, and that'd be another conversation. But we got it. Property's been on the market, I think, 32 or 36 days. That was an opportunity for us. Um, so surprised me just as much as it surprised anybody, but it worked. So, look for those opportunities. And the main thing is with all of this, it's about clear and open communication, right? You want to start having conversations with your buyers upfront. And they're the ones that usually are the most challenging because they don't have a whole lot of extra money for the most part. Or we've seen where it's like, well, I've never paid a buyer's commission myself, so why should I? The seller should pay that. Well, times are changing, kind of thing. Um, so just start having these conversations, tell them that, you know, yes, a lot of buyers, and this is true, or excuse me, sellers, a lot of sellers are still paying buyer's agent's commission. A lot of them are nationwide. A lot of them are. Abundance. Scarcity mindset. Murphy's Law is the listing that your buyer wants to buy is the one that's not paying anything. But if you have prepared your buyer for that possibility and given them the freedom to make decisions, right? One of the things I tell our buyers is this is what you're agreeing to in the buyer broker agreement, 3% plus the flat fee. The very next portion of that paragraph in the buyer broker agreement says that we're going to ask the seller to pay most, if not all of that. And then the very next portion of that paragraph in the buyer broker agreement says, if anything deviates from this, we're going to talk about it. And I keep reinforcing that to the buyers that we're going to keep talking about it. And so when I schedule property to go see, I always ask. It's like, hey, Terrence, I want to come see your property on 123 Sesame Street. Great. Want to come, tomorrow at 4 o'clock. By the way, what is the seller offering for commission? 2.5%. Okay, make a note. Hey, Jan, I'm coming to you next to talk about to schedule your listing, at 123 Main Street, tomorrow at 4:30. Great, thank you. Appreciate that. CBS code. Great, thank you. What is the seller paying for buyer's agent commission, if anything? And more often than not, they're paying 2.5 to 3%. Sometimes they say, oh, it's negotiable, put it in your offer, we'll see what happens. Fine. But then when we're going house to house with the buyers, I can say, okay, yeah, this one we're seeing here, this is 2.5%, that'll be fine for this one. This one's paying 3%. We're good there. And, then we get to, one that says, it says it's negotiable. We might be able to, get 3%, might be able to get 2.5%. They may say nothing. So, we have to have conversations about, if this is the house that you fall in love with, if it's the one, we will make it happen and we will figure out some way that I get paid, kind of thing. So have those conversations, allow the buyers to make those decisions for themselves. They may not want to deal with the property where it says, yeah, well, it's negotiable. Bring us your best offer and we'll see about paying you, kind of thing. The buyers, they can opt out of that. You can't discourage them, but they can opt out, right? And the only way they can do that is by having these healthy conversations. So what I want to know from you all are what are some of the conversations that you're having? What are some of the things you're hearing from buyers or sellers in the marketplace related to compensation?
Jeremy,
Yes, sir.
I, I'm in a situation right now. My client just bought a house.
Okay.
Okay, they bought the house, and the seller, they paid closing costs, which was great. But see, now they're in a position where they have to sell their house because they was in a house. Now they bought a house. Now they have to sell their house. The problem is that you know, and I went to her and I told her, hey, this is what your house is. I can't pick the price. I can give you a range of what your house may go for. And I gave it a range, and she kind of like blew that out of the water. She's like, nah, people down the street sold it for their house for this much. I said, well, we don't know what they had, and I I didn't do no, I did a CMA.
Hmm.
Everything sold for in that particular area, like let's say 340 to 365. No, excuse me, 240 to 265.
Okay.
She wanted to price hers at 300 and paying no commission. I said, well, I can't, tell you how to do it, but if you're not paying a commission, you're not going to get a lot of traffic. And we may have to come back and revisit our our asking price. And we did, and we had to drop the price. So, and we may have to drop it again because the house is overpriced. And I explained that to her, but she wanted to stick with what she got. I said, okay, if we don't get a lot of traffic, we have to revisit and do another price reduction. You know, so and I see inside in Long and Foster, I get I get decent amount of views, but nobody's picking up to want to go and see it.
Hmm.
You know,
So good for you for having some of those conversations up front, saying effectively what you said to her was the commission, paying a buyer's agent commission makes you competitive, right? And that's the way to frame it, is that, especially in that price range, a lot of buyers in these lower price ranges, a lot of buyers, period, don't have a lot of extra cash to pay their agent to do the work for them. So to be competitive, you really need to consider offering some amount of commission and then give them a hypothetical, right? So let's say there's your house, house A, and house B in the same neighborhood, roughly similar, roughly the same price, competition, and it's a flip of the coin for any buyer. Do I want house A or do I want house B? In the buyer's mind, if they're going to make an offer on house A, and then they say, oh, I owe additional money to my agent to make this happen at $260,000. Or I can have house B and I pay $260,000 and my agent is already paid as part of that. Which house is the buyer going to opt for?
B.
Even if it's another neighborhood nearby. Because sometimes it's not so much about, I want this specific neighborhood. It's like, I need to be within a 20-minute drive to my job, or I don't want to be too far from my kids' grandparents, kind of thing. So they're looking at a couple of neighborhoods in a general vicinity, right? So I always phrase that buyer's agent commission on the listing as making yourself competitive, right? And it's the same kind of thing of and it's money. Everything costs money, right? To make your house competitive with everything else in the marketplace, you want to clean up, right? Hiring someone to pressure wash is going to cost you money. You want to be as fresh as you can be. Whether you paint yourself or you hire someone, that paint costs money. Decluttering, it's going to cost you the emotional baggage of getting rid of your crap and or paying for a storage unit to put your crap in so that you are competitive, right? It all comes down to money. And sometimes it's that pain point is easier to take when it's okay. It's $100 for the pressure washer, or it's $200 for a couple of cans of paint or whatever. Fine. But everything has a price tag, including being competitive with commission. And 3% of 265 is, let's just call it $7,500. That sounds like a lot of money. And it is, and I don't want to minimize that, but that's due at closing. And when you have generations of buyers that are accustomed to sellers paying the buyer's agent's commission, that's a hard habit to break. And then you also have buyers in the marketplace that may understand it and they get it, but they don't have one extra dime, right? In 2022, here's another statistic for you. In 2023, 40% of the buyers in Southampton Roads were VA purchasers. That's a significant chunk of the marketplace. A VA purchaser, especially at this price point, can walk into the transaction for practically zero money out of pocket. Right?
Right.
They have to have their earnest money deposit and they have to pay for a home inspection. That's about it. And so how many VA buyers have we worked with over the years that their income, they can afford the mortgage, they've got good credit, they're flat broke?
I think they get the notion, okay, they don't have to bring it. I don't want to say it like this, but I'm gonna say it like this. They don't have to bring any more money. Whatever the agreed upon price is, that's the only thing they have to worry about. I think what they get caught up in is that they're not making as much money or walking away with as much money as they may have wanted to, you know.
Right.
And I try to tell, the houses, again, let's just use, 250,000. Okay, that's the house minus the commission. You don't have to, the lender or the mortgage company is going to let you know up front what, if any, money you have to bring to the table. All right, and most of that comes out of the mortgage or the bag of money that we're offering. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
so if if we offer 250, that's the only thing we have to worry about. The only thing you have to worry about is, your lender is going to let you know if we have to bring any more money to the table, and that's pretty much it. You know, I don't want to take up the whole conversation, so I'll leave it
No,
at that.
but that's exactly it. And so what I have told clients on both sides, sellers and buyers, is that we're in a new landscape for commission, compensation, things like that. I'm in a unique position that I grew up in the business. So I'm third generation at this. We've only ever charged 3% on a side and flexible a little bit there. So my 20 plus years of practice, plus 3 generations of cultural knowledge, let's call it, of real estate, I've never been here before. And I tell people this. I said, but I'm figuring it out. You're figuring it out. We're going to figure it out together. I'm a blackjack dealer. You're going to see my hands. We're going to have these conversations. And we're going to get this figured out. We're going to find you the right house that is going to make sure that I get paid. I can't work for free. My company won't let me work for free. And, just like you and everyone else, I got bills. So, I think I deserve compensation. But we're going to find, Jenny, an equitable and reasonable way forward, right? They like these words. And we're going to get there. I got you, kind of thing. And tell them that. Then you come back and talk to your broker and go, oh my God, I have no idea. What are we going to do? They're not paying anything. They have no money. What do we do? All right. That's a broker level question to figure out, right? And that may involve working with the lender and, things like that. But public facing with the client, we're going to figure this out together. We're going to keep having conversations. I'll talk to our attorney. I'll talk to my broker. I'll talk to the lender. We'll find some way to make this happen for you, kind of thing. Because we do have some people that are in very dire situations with housing, and they've got money coming in every month, they've got credit, and they've got maybe $1,500 in the bank. That'll get them in the door on a VA loan. So just like we have for years in prepping our buyers and sellers, there might be closing costs to be paid, right? Some markets, that was a foregone conclusion, right? 16 to 2018, buyers are pretty much always getting their closing costs paid, up to 3, maybe 4% sometimes, right? That was the cost of doing business, right? We're just in a new landscape right now. None of us have ever been here before, unless you're like 100 years old and still practicing real estate. So if it's something that gets into nuts and bolts and people really start getting bent out of shape over it, press pause, tell your clients, let me go do a little more research. Let me talk to a few more people and let me see what kind of answers I can get, right? And just say, we've not been here before, but we'll figure it out. I got you, kind of thing. Because that's what they want. They just want to know that they're covered and protected, and that they're going to survive all of this. Because they're hearing the buyers, the consumers in the marketplace are hearing that it was a Supreme Court decision, that Congress passed a law. They're thinking, oh, sellers don't have to pay a commission anymore. Well, they never really had to. They agreed to it in the contract. That's kind of what really burns my grits where the settlements are concerned and the lawsuits. It's like, all of these sellers signed a listing agreement that said, I'm going to pay X% on the listing side and X% on the buyer side, and here we go. Sorry you didn't read it, but you signed it. So yeah, this is a generational shift in real estate. We collectively here at Long & Foster, we're going to keep having conversations about this. The industry is going to keep having conversations about this with real estate and mortgage. And we're just going to have to keep having conversations with our clients. And sometimes we'll have just as many questions as our clients and not enough answers. But as with everything in real estate, if you don't have a good, ready answer, say, let me get back to you on that. I need to get a little bit more information, but I got you. Okay.
That reassurance.
Absolutely. Because what did I talk about earlier? This is a big emotional decision for a lot of people, right? $1,000 is a lot of money to a lot of people, and there's a lot of emotion attached to even $1,000, right? So when we get down to $1,000 in negotiation on a contract, however insignificant that may be for a $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 purchase, it's still emotional because we attach emotion to money in this culture. And which is funny, we were talking about giving money for Christmas presents, like, just fine, I'm going to give you $50, leave me alone. So just being able to maintain some neutrality, maintain calm, be reassuring to them. Brian Buffini talks about, all of his kids are, college age and above now, but when they were little, he used to talk about making sure that his kids knew that they had his full and undivided attention when he was talking with them. So he would hold their face and look right in their eyes and, listen to them intently so that they knew that they had his undivided attention. We pull that thread forward. Our clients, consumers, the buyers and sellers out there, they want us to hold their face right now and give them our undivided attention and let them know that I hear you, I see you, we'll figure this out together.
Yeah.
All right. Any
I think that's
other
what I need to do, grab their face.
Gently, James, gently.
Okay.
Because when you go to grab them, it's too easy just to you know,
Yeah, really.
just gently. And listen a lot. Our broker here, Tina, and if you haven't yet, I know Jenny and I have, if you go to Tina with a complaint and Tina can't do anything about it, but and she's recognizing that you're venting, I don't know why she hasn't trademarked this yet, but you'll hear from Tina. I understand. I understand.
Mhm.
Jenny's here laughing because, we can get wound up, and that's what our broker is there for, right? We get wound up, we go to our broker and just vent. I understand. So try that with your clients too. When they're getting all wound up, I understand. And then keep listening. I understand. Keep listening. And eventually they'll either solve the problem themselves or wear themselves down and wind down and give up. I understand. So there you go. All right. Have a fantastic holiday season. I don't think we have any more classes scheduled until January. So enjoy the holidays. Have a fantastic new year. 2025 is coming at us and coming at us fast. It is going to be phenomenal. All the numbers and data points I'm seeing, as well as just how I feel is that Ouija board approach to real estate. 2025 is going to be a great year. We're not looking at record numbers, we're looking at rising numbers for home sales, for prices, for buyers in the marketplace, things like that. So use some of this downtime to get a little bit more education, do some webinars, do success path trainings, learn everything you can at a granular level so that when you hit the ground running on January 2nd, you can start, and pardon my language on the video recording, but I want you to be able to kick ass and take names starting January 2nd, because 2025 is going to be a phenomenal year. And we got you. All right. Take care, everybody. See you next time.
All right, take care.